Thank you, Professor Dasher. I'm thrilled to be back in your class, back at my alma mater, and with my favorite social entrepreneur in the world, Sanvar Oberoi. So I grew up in the world of the Gandhi ashram, and to me, core to growing up was a value system that Gandhi believed in, that human dignity of every individual is important. Upholding it is extremely important. And Gandhi believed that our relationship with nature, rather than looking at nature as a resource for us to exploit, if we look at nature as we are part of nature and that it's a trustee relationship, we are the trustee who has to uphold and take care of nature, the world would be such a better place. And in that sense, in my opinion, Gandhi was a great social entrepreneur. We just didn't have the phrase then. And so I'm very excited, full circle, after being in the world of tech for a long time, to be back to that world. Through Ashoka was my entry point, and now in the context of Sustainable Development Goals, looking at how can we preserve the environment, what can we do to uplift human dignity, what can we do to bring more equality in the world. The world right now is at one of the worst possible crises ever in terms of where we are with the environment and just the plight of human beings. A large percent of human beings, the inequality has got to a level where it's not sustainable. It's one of the most complex crises we are facing, whether it be environmental degradation, poverty, migration issues, diseases, malnutrition, access to water and sanitation. Things are getting worse and worse for a large percent of the population. In recognition of that, all world leaders came together last June, and what was a miracle, it was very hard to get everyone to do this, but everybody collectively ratified what are being called the Sustainable Development Goals. These goals replace the Millennial Development Goals, which were more limited in scope. These goals are extremely ambitious and very comprehensive, and yet, and going to be not easy to achieve, but it's the recognition that we have no choice now. If we don't do this, we will not survive as a species, perhaps even the whole globe. So it was very exciting, the momentum in New York when they were being ratified, and already so much has happened since June. Unlike the MDGs, which were more the UN and governments, the SDGs seem to have galvanized people in the private sector, civil society, pretty much people from all over the world, and there's a lot more to be done. The goals are very strategically designed, in that they're focused on understanding that you can't solve climate crisis without thinking of the impact on the human beings being affected where you're trying to solve the problem. It's not like human rights and climate change, the way the world has been thinking. They're unified, and when solving one, we have to think of the other. And so the term climate justice is being used now to capture this concept. The goals being so ambitious, it's being estimated it'll take $3 to $4 trillion. There's not that much capital in traditional philanthropy and government aid and UN aid. So very new types of philanthropy will need to be galvanized. It's going to be critical that the private sector play a role here, because that's where a lot more capital is there. Very innovative solutions are going to be needed. So organizations like Ashoka, Acumen, where there are entrepreneurial solutions to solve these problems, will play a pretty key role. People like Sanvar are going to be critical to solve the problems, as well as academics. So we've been engaging academics from Stanford and Berkeley and the East Coast on this front, because we'll have to think of the role of technology as well to solve these problems in a different way. So these are the 17 goals, and just talking about how ambitious they are. So the very first goal is we're going to eliminate poverty. The second goal is we're going to eliminate hunger across the world in the next 15 years. We are going to make sure that everyone has access to good health, good education, economic empowerment and employment for all, gender equality. There's going to be no gender equality problems in the world. We're going to tackle climate change. And also the core ethos and spirit of the goals is sustainable communities and self-sustaining communities. And the other key thinking here is that it's not the global north going and solving problems in the global south. They're universal. We here in the US and England, everywhere, we need these problems to be solved as much as in India and sub-Saharan Africa. We are all in this together, and the problems are all over. So we have to work as united world citizens, civic society, philanthropy, the private sector, governments, UN, everyone together, and weave together the social, economic, and environmental challenges and come up with solutions. So one of the organizations that took a lead in coming up with what the Sustainable Development Goals are and is now taking a lead in solving them, bringing together various stakeholders, is the SDG Philanthropy Platform, the Sustainable Development Goals Philanthropy Platform. This is a platform which is, the initial implementers are the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, UNDP from the UN side, which is the main implementing organization in all the countries in the world from the UN side for the goals, as well as the Foundation Center in New York, which is the biggest repository of information on foundations, nonprofits. So they will play a role from the technology side. The initial funders of this platform are the Ford Foundation, the Conrad Hilton Foundation, MasterCard. Several others have joined recently, not on this slide, but Wings from Europe, the Council on Foundations, and some of the biggest the organizations that bring together many different types of foundations are all joining. The purpose of this platform is to galvanize philanthropy and kind of revisit the role of philanthropy in solving the goals, but also working very closely with other types of partners, private sector, governments, UN, civil society. The role of civil society is going to be very key, people like all of us. So hence, in that spirit, I have been recruited as an advisor in the goal. So there are a few people from civil society who are not part of these organizations. And the thinking is that let's also leverage technology and let's bring all world citizens to solve these problems. And so the platform, I will show you all the website in case anyone's interested. So it's sdgfunders.org. There is a lot of information on the goals, statistics, where they're being deployed. I won't get into the details because we want to get to the wonderful work Sanvar's doing, but the countries where they're being deployed and how they're going to be measured. For each goal, there are several indicators. So while some people have criticized the goal saying too ambitious, this is meant more as an overall scaffolding and an infrastructure for everyone to find a way to engage and solve the social and environmental problem they want. Each goal is broken down into detailed sub-goals and indicators on how to measure success. And that information would be available on the website. The platform has started active pilots in 4 countries: Kenya, Ghana, Indonesia, and Colombia. In Kenya and Ghana, the focus has been on education, bringing multi-stakeholders together to look at how to deal with the education goal, as well as coming up with very creative solutions to education and looking at strategically and how to bring transparency, how to be strategic around galvanizing and transforming the education industry in these countries. In Indonesia, the initial focus has been around activating millennials. Young people these days, like you, think very differently. You're very mission conscious. You care a lot about changing the world. So how to kind of transform the role of philanthropy rather than just big money coming from older donors. In Indonesia, there's technology being deployed so that millennials can start becoming philanthropists, and that experiment is going really well. In Colombia, the focus is, type on that slide, sorry. In Colombia, the focus is on coming up with bringing multi-stakeholders together. The Colombian government is very involved, private sector, other players, as well as Colombia is playing a role in being a hub for Kenya, Ghana, Indonesia, all of these countries and Colombia coming together to think about peace building. So as you can see, there's different kind of ecosystem developments, different initiatives in each of these pilot countries. This year, the platform is launching now in some of the biggest countries. We are exploring launching in China, Brazil, possibly Zambia, and we are certainly launching in India towards the end of the year. Very excited to be launching in India. The goal we are considering, we're still figuring out the plan, but we will probably be focusing on the gender equity goal, so economic empowerment, education of women and girls, and it's a goal that many of us are very passionate about, and Sanvar is addressing that as well. Sanvar is actually addressing 8, 9, almost 9 to 10 of the SDGs, so very excited to be here with them today. So our talk today, since it's about social entrepreneurship in India, the landscape there, as I was mentioning, I think social entrepreneurship has been there in the spirit of India for a long, long time because of the Gandhian movement. Gandhi actually believed in micro-enterprise And he believed that each human being can have dignity if they can come up with a way of being economically independent, hence the spinning wheel that each villager could have in their home. That was a social entrepreneur, and he developed an ecosystem for social entrepreneurship. Ashoka, in case some of you don't know Ashoka is an organization that has been the premier organization in the world in identifying the most amazing social entrepreneurs, people who are passionate, people who you can trust with your life, and they're solving some of the biggest social and environmental problems around the world, and in a very systemic manner. So Ashoka is all over the world, but particularly in India, there are over 400 Ashoka fellows. It's just one of the countries where Ashoka has the biggest presence. Bill Drayton, the founder of Ashoka, was very inspired by Gandhian philosophy, and it's a global organization based in Washington, D.C., but the name Ashoka comes from an ancient Indian emperor who spread the message of peace and nonviolence via Buddhism all over the known world then. So Ashoka is very active in India, and again, Sanvar is also an Ashoka fellow. And then there's Acumen also in India. There are many other such organizations doing very interesting things around social entrepreneurship right now. And just like with cell phones, where India leapfrogged what we have in the US, my sense is that India is at the cutting edge of what's happening with social entrepreneurship right now. And the Indian government has just started a special group to advance the SDGs. And our philanthropy platform is going to be working closely with UNDP on the ground and with some of these organizations. And we're just so fortunate to have Sanvar with us, because even this group that has been started with the Indian government on the SDGs, they've invited Sanvar and his co-founders to help the government design the whole strategy around this. So he almost touches on everything I'm talking about. And so the new models emerging, we talked a bit about Ashoka. And there are also another major changes happening with millennials. Unlike the older way of solving social problems, where the only way people were thinking of social problems were by being dependent on grants, several of the millennials who are very, very mission-driven are solving social and environmental problems and starting businesses to do that. And they're very clear that they care about a social cause, and that is the mission, but they're also developing revenue models right in the core strategy that's very sustainable that way. And that trend is happening quite a bit in India as well. Indian entrepreneurs are very resourceful. In a sense, we are spoiled here in Silicon Valley. We have too much capital. And as Rajiv Circle, that Professor Tasha mentioned, Sanvar is also a Rajiv Circle fellow. I'm one of the founders of Rajiv Circle, and we have Rajiv Circle fellows visiting from India right here with us right now. And as these young entrepreneurs from India come and visit, the entrepreneurs, many of them social entrepreneurs like Shishri in the audience and Sanvar, what I see as I contrast them with the entrepreneurs I mentor here at StartX and such is, because capital is constrained, these entrepreneurs from India and Pakistan are so resourceful and so focused on thinking about the customer and not just being in love with just technology and methodology. They have no other choice. And I think that puts India in a very special position as well. And as this shift is happening on young people, not just in India, all over the world, new models of entrepreneurship are emerging. And I want to talk about one and then hand over to Sanvar. So if you look at this diagram where the horizontal axis is purpose, on the left end is maximizing financial benefit to owners, on the right end is maximizing social benefit. The other axis, the vertical axis at the bottom, is contributed in funds, which is grants and donations. The other end of the spectrum is earned income. If you look at that, and we look at the existing sector, so the private sector, the classic for-profits fall at the top left quadrant because they're maximizing benefit to the owners, and they earn their own income, and they're profitable. The other end of the spectrum, at the bottom left, are social sector organizations, nonprofits, the government, public sector, because they're dependent on grants traditionally, and they're focused on maximizing social benefit to society. There are some trends happening recently. In the private sector, people are already starting to think, large corporations are starting CSR groups. There is many other trends happening. Socially responsible investing is happening. impact investing has started quite a bit in the social sector and philanthropic sector. And yet these are starting to happen gradually and incrementally. But one other trend is happening. One other major trend is happening, that the new group of millennials and young social entrepreneurs that I talked about are starting hybrid forms of organizations that are actually, they have clear social mission primacy, so they fall on the top right quadrant. They are maximizing social benefit for society, and they have mission primacy. They even often have a mission lock. They're very clear that their core mission is a social or environmental purpose. And yet, from day one, they have earned income models where a significant percent of their expenses are covered from their own generated earned income. And this is happening across the board all over the world. The hybrid forms of organization, the social enterprises, there's social businesses, and the whole ecosystem is just starting to develop around that. This is, in a sense, the fourth sector of the economy. The other three sectors being the private sector, the social sector, and the government sector. And this sector is going to be huge, and it's going to play a key role in transforming the world and in solving the problems as SDGs have identified. We can solve the problems one at a time, which is how we are looking at it right now. Many parts of the world pick up each SDG and solve them. But there's another way also to approach this, that look at the root causes of why these problems exist and just do things a different way. And that is what the companies operating in the fourth sector are doing, as you will soon see with Sanvar. Because and this is another way to engage the private sector as well, rather than just relying on grants and taking one problem at a time and solving it. If brilliant young minds can start organizations that are focused on solving social problems and doing it in a manner that's sustainable, and they themselves are sustainable financially, then the world could rapidly be a very different place. And this is happening. I'm also part of a group that is working on ecosystem development for this fourth sector. One of the challenges in this sector is that while they're the organizations, the ecosystem is still developing. So most entrepreneurs have to either be a nonprofit or a for-profit. You can't really go and legally register as a for-benefit. But if you did, you could optimize for having profits or revenues as well as having social mission primacy. So there's policy work that's needed. There's work in mobilizing finance. There's work in mapping the sector and connecting and finding all the organizations around the world. But particularly in India, there's a lot happening. And with that, I would like to hand over back to Professor Dasher.
Yeah, I want to ask just a follow-up question about this fourth sector.
Yeah.
In some states of the United States, there is a new kind of corporate registration called the B Corporation.
Yes.
Is the fourth sector exactly the same as what we're thinking about with a B Corp, or is it somehow different?
So it is, B Corp would fall in the general movement that's happening in that space. B Corp is a certification, and what is needed is a lot more than that. And so it's a great start. There's B Corps, there's benefit corps, which allow organizations to have more flexibility in having social mission in the charter. What would be an ideal for benefit is one which mandates social mission primacy. In addition to certification in the actual legal charter.
Right.
So that way, investors could know which is a social cause. It could be measurable.
Right.
It could bring transparency in the system. So while these are all movements happening overall in the fourth sector ecosystem, there is still a lot that needs to happen to have the ideal for benefit. That said, there is some work happening in many states in the U.S. and particularly in England. There is some version of a for benefit that mandates social mission primacy. So the trend has started. A lot more work needed. Yeah.
So just kind of to set up Sanvar, and also to throw something out on the table that we'll come back to, a lot of this has to do with the sustainability of the group that you create, the organization that you create.
Absolutely.
And, we think so much about starting a company and going to exit. And after exit, it's somebody else's problem. And this is not quite so clear in the world of social entrepreneurship. So we will come back to this point. But for now, Sanvar, you have a great example of a lot of what Radhika was talking about.
Thank you.
So if you would give your prepared comments.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Thank you, Radhika. It's tough to go after Professor and Berkeley and Stanford people, but try our best to do that. Okay. Ever since I was in sort of middle school and high school, I'm one of those weird academic students who used to always have my hand raised and ask those curious questions that no one else liked asking. And I'm one of those weird school children who used to actually like doing homework and exams because I think at heart I'm truly an academic. And that curiosity sort of always continued. And I remember one distinct moment, and that's very important to note in the context, because that's particularly important to understand why we do what we do. When I was in 8th grade, I've studied brought up in Mumbai. In 8th grade, my geography textbook had a statement. It started, in fact, the first page had this statement saying that the agricultural sector, which is the primary sector in India, occupies about 58% of the workforce, works in agricultural sector of India, but contributes only about 13.8 to 13.9% of the GDP. If you just read that statement, that there's a clear inequality, there's clearly an inefficiency in the system. And as an academic, or just as a curious child back then, you start wondering, why is this happening? How could this exist? If someone in the world must know the answer to why is there such a large percent of Indian population which directly works in agriculture, but why are they collectively then only contributing so little to Indian GDP? And that curiosity, which started in 8th grade, sort of really really clinged on to me for clearly even till now, and I think will continue to, because I've never really been able to find an answer to that. That was always something that stayed with me, and I thought this is just something on the side I'll continue reading and exploring and learning about. When I was an undergrad studying business in Bombay, we came across something that sort of challenged the norm. When you're studying business in undergrad in Bombay, unfortunately, we were only taught either there's this thing called a for-profit capitalistic model of companies, which is, and examples were given time a dozen of them, or there's this philanthropy-based, not-for-profit, donation, charity-based organization model. We were taught, that's the only thing we were taught, as two extreme models. Until we came across this one organization. It's called Students in Free Enterprise. They've now changed their name to Enactus, the global organization. They've got chapters in different universities, undergrad universities across the world. And that blew my mind, because for the first time, they challenged students from across the world to participate in an annual competition, to look at a local community that is economically disenfranchised, and try to create a business solution, or a market solution, a sustainably financed market solution to a problem that exists in the community. And the only criteria that you could, to participate in the annual competition, and that really excites, because we would get all expenses paid, flight to Berlin, and it changes year on year. So the motivation was there, but the judging criteria was that whatever solution that you create, or whatever solution any organization of SIFE, any chapter of SIFE across the world creates, it has to be financially independent or financially self-sustaining, which is the most wonderful concept that we imbibed. And we were fortunate to be a part of a project called Project Chirag, which happens to be one of India's largest rural, which has now become one of India's largest rural solar electrification project. And it wasn't, the traditional method would have been to go and just give solar lanterns for free. But that doesn't work. And it's been proven on multiple levels at behavioral adoption, behavioral economics, that when if a solar lantern was given for free, its adoption in the village on a sustained basis on the long term would not happen. And of course, at some point in time, we stand the risk that if funding dries up, or if philanthropy and charity and donation dries up, that's pretty much the end of it. And that's too scary a model to continue for eternity. So we were forced to innovate an economic model into the system that could self-generate revenues and continue. That kind of thought process, coupled with the fact that we were forced to step out of our bubble, being born brought up in a city like Mumbai, forced to spend time outside the city for months at a stretch in villages across India, that opened our eyes as well. That good God, there are these kind of problems that exist in my own country, and to think of it, they were not the most complicated problems. They were fairly simple problems that needed simple solutions. But that thought process, coupled with our collective learning about agriculture, really spurred this thought that, hold on, what if a bunch of us didn't go the corporate jobs method route and then go on to probably study at Stanford and get a fancy investment banking job, but instead, what if we, not just at a college and an undergraduate college level, but what if we really go on to create a company that can find a solution to agriculture? This statistic and this statement has always stayed with me for life, and it continues to stay with me even now, because this is something I cannot accept. None of us accept in the company this statement, because it is grossly. I think this is an insult to sort of mankind. That how could we have created an economic system that allows for such a thing to happen? And we need to significantly, completely turn around the way the system is working currently. We realize that if you really want to make a difference in agriculture, and we really want to spend time in turning around agriculture in India, reading McKinsey reports or reading secondary reports can only do so much. This is the time when you really need to spend time in villages and rural India. Because at the heart of it all, it comes down to empathy. And without empathy, you cannot even move a dial in this domain. We could always sit in boardrooms and make academic reports on it, and you could always have theoretical discussions. But to really go on ground and really make a difference cannot be done till you've not spent time understanding what the root problems are. A lot of people said that the root problems are that there is lack of market access, there's a lack of supply chain, etc., which there are problems. But at the heart of it, it comes down to what we think the root problem is: legacy systems of agriculture in India and across the developing part of the world, as now we've come to understand and learn. Systems that have existed for 60 or 70 years still continue to exist in India. And that's grossly inefficient methods that have not kept up with the times. And that's something that we could not accept as status quo. And here's the thing that we felt very fortunate about. Because we did not, none of my co-founders, were 7 co-founders, because none of my co-founders and I belonged to the agricultural domain as our prior background history, and we were all brand new to the agricultural sector. In a way, we thought that's a blessing in disguise, because if you don't belong to the sector, you literally come in from scratch. You can question everything, and that's exactly what we did. We did not take any assumptions. We did not take any base understanding or knowledge of what things have been in the past, and that's why we should continue doing that in the future. We said we're going to build from scratch, and that we felt was a very liberating plan, when you were to literally draw from a blank sheet of paper a company or an industry from ground up. We spend a lot of time across India traveling. Also, when you're 22, I think that's a good excuse to tell your parents that you want to backpack. And we did that. We literally have traveled and spent a great amount of time across India and traveled by trains and buses and stayed in almost a lot of villages. And that is one of the most invaluable experiences that I'm grateful for that we did retrospectively now. One of the biggest learnings that we came across was India and across the world, most of the developing part of the world, has a gorgeous biodiversity. We're gifted by God or nature by some of the most amazing and the most beautiful crops that just grow in the backyards of the farmers. But the question really that we identified then was that, why are they not doing more with the same crops? They're growing rice, they're growing wheat. The farmers are technically doing the best effort that they possibly can. We questioned so many times that could they do anything more to improve their plight, to improve their human development index, to their quality of life? Could the farmers do anything more? Should our intervention be with them? Or should the intervention be in some technologies? Should we do IoT and things of that sort? But we realized that the farmers are pretty much doing everything they could. Industry is trying its best to set up, the supply chain systems, and we're not the experts at that. The government and large-scale companies are the experts at setting up that end-to-end supply chain market access. But we realized that the one domain in agriculture that enough research is not going into is agricultural innovation or crop innovation or alternative material sciences, actually, to be very specific. That led us to looking at the rest of the world, and we came across really interesting models in Japan and in Indonesia. Japan, for instance, has done such amazing projects with its own bamboo that grows in their backyard, and that India grows in India's backyard as well. But why have we not even scratched the surface of using bamboo for its alternative applications? That's what Japan or Indonesia also have done with their naturally found crops. And that really was our eureka moment, or our aha moment, because we realized, hold on, there are a lot of crops that grow in the backyard of India. Let's not tinker with getting another crop from another part of the world and forcing it down India's throat, but instead look at what anyway grows in the most natural environments across the country. But what can we do with the existing crops? Can we do alternative applications of existing crops as well, and in a combined fashion with food crops and cash crops together? And that process and that theory that was back then theoretical has manifested now into a more sustained organization. We came across this, which was a shocker to me as well. I know this is quite odd because we're speaking in California, but here's the thing, which came as a shocker to me as well. That before cannabis as a crop went to the Netherlands and Colorado and California, etc., cannabis, the plant, comes from Central Asia, all across Central Asia. So Afghanistan, Tibet, China, India, Nepal, the entire Himalayan region is where cannabis originated from thousands of years ago. And even today, if you go post-monsoon anywhere across North India or Tibet, China, etc., and you're just driving by the side of the road and you look left or right, there's cannabis that just grows in the wild. It is literally the world's largest wild natural reserve of cannabis. It's very different, though, that kind of cannabis compared to the cannabis that maybe certain people in this auditorium might know of. But it's considered because it's wild. That plant in India has never been domesticated. It just grows in the backyard. And we're a bunch of young, people from Bombay, and we know of what cannabis has become in the rest of the world. And can you imagine our sight or our reaction when we came across, when we were in North India, and we said, we knew that it always grew there, but we didn't know to what scale and to what extent is it available, in what quantities is available, how easy is it for farmers to have access to it. And we said, this is absurd. You stand on top of a mountain in pretty much any Himalayan state, and you stand on a mountain pretty much till the horizon, it just grows. And no one's gone and planted it, it's just forest land. So that we couldn't but help ask the question, can we do something with this? And when we asked that question, and we gone there for a hike, and we were walking back, and we came across one of the most interesting things I think this is where you start believing in destiny, because the dots seem to be connecting themselves. There were local women in a rural part of a village in India who took the seed, not the bud, but who took the seeds of the plant, with hemp seeds, which Whole Foods, etc. also sell now. They took, and Body Shop also sells. They took the seeds and they would crush it using a very stone crusher, and take the oil, scoop the oil, and apply it to their sides and apply it to their face. And they say this. They don't know why. They don't have white papers or technical papers to prove anything of that sort. But somehow, through knowledge and passed down through word of mouth, generation after generation, these rural communities, disconnected from the rest of the world, who've not even been connected through the internet yet, know the innate technical benefits of hemp oil, which which went to our surprise when we reached, and us being the product of the internet generation, we had to cross-check this because they said it's a great oil to prevent UV radiation, etc., from the sun. And to our surprise, when we came to Delhi and we had access to the internet again and we looked it up, now we know why French companies and British companies like The Body Shop, it's one of the best-selling products is a hemp collection. But they've got Western science and they've got laboratories to prove that. How would women in rural India know the same thing? And it was but natural that this is knowledge, sort of traditional ancient knowledge, still continuing to exist and being passed down generation after generation. We had goosebumps. Because can you imagine, we're there, we feel we're in the cusp of we're right in the middle. There are farmers in India and women artisans in India who have access to some of the best material in the world, and there's a global market for the same product. And we said, it's a no-brainer, according to us back then. And it still continues to be a no-brainer for us because all then we need to do is just connect them. Of course, it takes a lot of effort, it's easier said than done, but the goal is just if you connect them, and that's thought process, that spurred a new thought process that this is just hemp and this is just cannabis. We can focus on this, but can you imagine if there were more companies like us who also identified other crops in the country that were just lying there, that were just growing anyway, that also had a global market that the farmers didn't know had a global market because they have no access to what the global markets are in materials science and materials research, in biomaterials, but they have it in their backyards. We went on to study the plant a lot more at a technical level. We understood the difference in different types of cannabis. Of course, again, sativa and indica is better known here. But back at home, we understand that sativa varieties, which are the taller varieties, are better for industrial products, and indica varieties are better for recreational or medicinal products. We searched into the history of the crop as well. We've realized it's one of the oldest cultivated crops. It's played a significant part of US history as much as it's played a significant part of European and Indian history as well, Chinese history as well. Henry Ford made his first Ford car out of hemp bioplastics as well. It was the go-to crop after in Fukushima and Chernobyl for phytoremediation of soil as well, because it's one of the best phytoremediation crops to grow after say a nuclear waste to phytoremediate the soil. It's a billion dollar, it's actually called a $1 billion super crop. BMW, Mercedes, Lotus are companies who already have been using it for a couple of years now as bioplastics in their door paneling and dashboards. It's a $38 billion global industry. And as we continued our research into it, we kept coming across even more interesting statistics about this. That's the Body Shop collection, Adidas and Puma, Vans, all of these companies, Nike, all of these companies at some point in time have or continue to have hemp fabric integrated products as a part of their product mix. It astounded us. Are you serious? This is actually happening in the rest of the world? And it continues. 25,000 users across 17 industries, ranging from animal bedding and animal fodder, all the way down to really highly technical products that I will be coming across as well. And it's a major industry across 45 countries. And this was yes, Indian farmers have access to the most amount of hemp than even Europe or Canada does. I said, that's where we're going to be building a company. And we finally went ahead after we spent a couple of years only doing research, because before just setting up a company, we really wanted to know what are we getting into. It is an opportunity cost. Many of us founders, we're 7 co-founders, and many of us were working in consulting companies and Deloitte, etc., parts of Yahoo as well. And for us to convince our parents to quit our job is also quite something. But we could not but do it. I just as a personal experience, I'll just say one thing that I had a great experience at Deloitte. I'm fortunate, I'm lucky that I got to learn from one of the world's best companies as well. But at the same time, it felt a bit inadequate, because what's the point of me, after having got some amazing education that at least India can provide, going and helping rich companies get richer, to be honest. And that's fine. There are a lot of people in the world who should continue doing that, and that's good because it adds to global GDP. But at the same time, once you get a sense of agriculture in India, and once you spend those years in staying with the farmers and villages, and when you've seen the apathy of farmer suicides and the number of farmer suicides that exist in India, and the rate and the number just continuously going up, when you see a number like 18,000 farmers permanently leave agriculture in India to never come back and go for menial jobs in cities, even though there's going to be a decrease in their annual income. But they're doing it because they think that that's the aspirational life to work towards. Urbanization and migration is a significant part of our problem in India. You cannot but think that young minds like me and many more should be looking at agriculture as an industry because it needs it. Because if we continue the pace we're going at right now, we're headed towards a very disastrous environmental situation in the future. And this agriculture is not something you can turn on overnight. It needs systemic change, which takes decades to see the effect of when you start the process. We realize that we're on the brink of something very new. There's no precedent for this. We're literally creating a new industry from scratch. But that's a good thing, because we said, okay, we're going to learn. We're going to learn from the failures of other crops. There's good things to learn and the bad things to learn. One of the biggest learnings that we took back is that there's certain crop that I've been asked not to name, but there's certain crop industries that are set up in India. Out of every 100 rupees in the economic system that is created as a value in the industry in certain crops that has to get shared back down the value chain, in many crops, the disproportion in income inequality comes to sometimes is 92:8. That means the company or the processing company in the middle who buys the crop and processes the crop into making end products keeps 92 of every 100 rupees, and only 8 rupees is passed back down to the farmer. And that's that's just a gross difference in income distribution and value distribution. And when we spoke to those companies, they said that in their opinion, converting a seed to a crop is not value additive enough, in their opinion. And whatever magic it takes in the middle to convert that, which is basically the farmer's job, that's not something that we were willing to accept. So he said, because we're starting on a clean slate, fortunately, we can literally write our own rules and our own manuals of not only how my company, but how the entire industry is going to work here on. So we said, we're going to follow a new approach. It just so happens that we didn't know the fourth sector existed back then, but it just so happens because it's the most commonsensical approach to take back at home. You cannot but take that approach if you're building a company like that, because it has to be a win-win. The farmers cannot be unhappy, because then it's a domino effect. It will cause, it could work fine for a couple of years, but in the long run, the entire industry will break down, or there might be revolution. And that's something we need to have an inclusive approach.
So Sanvar, what year is this? What year was this when you're
when
starting?
When 2013.
Okay, 2013. So it's still very recent.
Oh, very recent, yeah.
Okay.
We realized we need to build an inclusive business for tomorrow. And so we said, we're going to build the entire, and that's what we do. We said, this is our forte. We're going to build the entire hemp ecosystem in India. We're going to work with some of the world's best hemp companies, because no point of reinventing the wheel and take their help. And there are some fantastic companies across the world who've already done immense work for decades before we did. We have to work with government and policymakers. This is not one of those approaches where you have to petition the government and be against the government and petition from outside. We have to work with them hand in glove, because it's as much their responsibility as it's our responsibility to care for the farmers. We have to work with scientists and researchers, and R&D is a core part of what we do, because that's the most critical factor that's missing, we feel, in the industry. We have to work with local farmers for their interests. We have to work with industry. Industry has to come hand in glove with us. We're still a startup. We don't have the resources, financial or otherwise, to be able to actually process all of the crop into end products. So we said we have to get industry support, because they have the large infrastructure already set up in India. And we have to, of course, get the B2B and B2C customers to actually, because they're the final paying guys. When they create the economic opportunities, when everyone else in the ecosystem can actually exist and the ecosystem can even be alive, because that's the blood of the ecosystem, is when the customer actually pays for product and then everyone else benefits from that. We realized that we're going to start with the most easy things. We're going to create products from hemp for the most basic needs of mankind, because that's what's needed in India to begin with. We said we started with hemp foods, which is one of the world's most nutritional and balanced food source. We created hemp textiles. In fact, the shirt I'm wearing is a hemp fabric shirt made from India. And the first time we had the fabric being made, it was huge. It is our version of 0 to 1, at least back in the subcontinent. Because for the first time, fibers grown in the wild in India hemp fibers have been, for the first time, gone through a loom, gone through complete textile processing, and become a shirt. So it was our miracle product. and hempcrete, which is the world's most green, is one of the greenest building solutions. And we've learned that cotton and a lot of other crops that are used as of now for textiles, for instance, are not environmentally the most sustainable crops to grow in the long run for textiles as well. Cotton, for instance, absorbs 10 times more water in the production process as what hemp does. And fortunately, a lot more companies globally are recognizing this. We realized that we need to build our model of judging our impact. And we said, again, unaware that the rest of the world is also thinking the same way, we realized on a commonsensical approach that we don't need to judge us only on profit, net profit that we turn year on year to us and the investors, but we need to follow a method where we also literally quantify the environmental impact and we quantify the human impact. So we literally do build a triple bottom line in a quantitative term that is publicly available at all points of time. At the heart of our operations is poverty alleviation, rural development, and livelihood creation. And all the women that you see are, and the fibers that you see are hemp fibers in India. We work tirelessly, and we made mistakes along the way because, well, it's a natural process. Right? Instead of working with the men, we've realized, because then they go and spend the money on social evils, we've realized to work with women instead, because as women artisans, they're better spenders in a household of additional income that's created because of our process. This would have been fine, and we were going well along till something happened, till this happened. This is Ray Kurzweil's, again, back coming back to Singularity and the Valley. But the University of Alberta, I believe, and Ray Kurzweil also highlighted it. The University of Alberta, Dr. Milton, came out with one of the most phenomenal studies. He took hemp fibers that are available in Canada as well. He took hemp fibers and essentially created pure carbon nanosheets that have a very high application in supercapacitors and ultracapacitors. That was our 2.0 awakening, if you may, because suddenly we were happy. We were making food, textiles, and building materials so far, and the farmers were getting a significantly increased per capita income in addition to what the crops they were growing anyway, because we were using a crop rotational method with the farmers, with food crops and cash crops growing simultaneously. But this changed everything for us. This spurred us to create the Boeco Innovation Lab, because we realized, hold on, other than just food, textiles, and construction material, we could be even potentially sitting the same material, the same crops could be used for so many more things than we've even identified. We realized we went ahead and created the Boeco Innovation Lab, which is an open center. What do we bring? We bring to the table access to crops and access to farmers. We bring access to not only hemp, but any crop that can grow in the developing economy. We bring that to the table. But we know we don't have the smartest people in the world working for our company. We cannot have. That will never be possible. So we invite and attract artists or inventors, material scientists or biohackers, anyone in the world who is interested in working with materials, come in and let's go create. Because the more we create and up the ante on creating better, high-value products from the same crops, it's a win-win. Industry wins, so do the farmers win, because they're locked into a percentage of the revenue generation, not a fixed capped income that is what they get. We've realized since then we've gone on quite a pace, because we've realized that hemp you can make 3D printing material. Legos, I believe, and a lot of other companies across the world are looking at studying it as well. BBC also been writing about the fact that hemp fibers are better than graphene in certain applications. The university developed supercapacitors from hemp. Batteries of the future will be significantly important to have more sustainable materials integrated into them. At the end of it, we didn't even realize, but retrospectively, now that we look back, it just happens to be so that we are between 9 to 11 SDGs is something that we're working, that we're directly impacting as a part of our effort. Finally, at the end of it, this is one of the results of my ongoing PhD thesis, that hemp as an economy, as a new industry in India, new agricultural pie being created, adds a benefit of 2.4 billion into the Indian economy directly, which I can't even wait to imagine to see how will it be when you take it to Africa and a lot of other parts of the world as well. We're potentially changing that with 380 million farmers. But I want to emphasize on this one slide. One of the other things, and I'll just take a second to say this, outside of economics and outside of academics that I have predominantly been focusing on, one of the most core beliefs is that Shakespeare said farmers are one of the noblest people on the planet because they're providers of any and everything that we see around us, predominantly. I hate to see a society today, and I'm part of it. I hate to see a society today where in a social pyramid, farmers are the bottommost rung of our social pyramid. We need to reinstate the status quo of farmers the way they're looked upon in our society. And we hope that by our effort, it's not just economic, but it's about them feeling a part of the new economic world order as well. They need to be reinstated, and we don't need a social pyramid anymore. Maybe doesn't need to be a pyramid of a hierarchy, that everyone should be at par. And I know this is very utopic to say, but we need more empathy to be built, because forget hemp. A lot of people back home don't even know what it takes to grow one tomato. What the amount of effort that it takes to grow one potato as well. It's amazing, and we need to build more empathy across urban and rural divide. We feel that it's inevitable, because industry needs to significantly transform, and sustainable manufacturing needs to be a process that needs to get adopted world over, not only in developing part of the world. I want to finish off with this. We say this a lot in the company now. We say that while Silicon Valley continues to make a dent in the universe, we really feel that farmers in developing economies can grow the materials of the future. And that's the one way that people traditionally thought that agriculture and technology and Silicon Valley are probably furthest away from each other as possibly they can be. I don't think that's true. I think that farmers in developing economies can now start growing materials for the future. Rice husk, for example, can already be used for 3D printing material as much as the rice grain can be monetized as well. We need to move away from a mono monetization method to using crops and really understanding from scratch what more crops can be used for in a material science domain. And that's the only way farmers will be relevant in the future 100 years of the world as well.
Okay, Sanvar, thank you very much. I can tell that your passion is really into what you're doing. I do want to ask a couple of procedural questions, though. I notice it's bohico.org.
Yeah.
Now, you're registered as a nonprofit?
No, we're not. We're registered for...
How did you get away with a .org domain name?
No, to begin with, the .com is actually the .com.
Somebody else's?
Yes,
okay.
the .com is an electricity producer in Indonesia.
Okay.
But
yeah, okay. No. But in any case, how did you get the money to get this started?
So having 7 co-founders helps in that case.
So friends and family from yourselves?
Ourselves.
Yeah, right. Okay, so from yourselves. But then what do you need? You needed funding to get some sort of bootstrap.
No, that's right. For the first 3 years, in fact, since 2013 to, in fact, just this May, we had bootstrapped. Ashoka has helped as well. The government of India has helped as well. So ourselves, Ashoka, government of India, and revenue, selling the shirt has helped the most to get us to this stage.
So ongoing, do you see Bohico becoming completely sustainable only on your revenue, or do you see it always continuing to be sort of a hybrid model of revenue and grants and so forth?
No. Grants is good, but it is already on its... We've broken even through operational revenue, and we will continue to now self-fund ourselves.
Have you gone outside and gotten any other people to invest in the company?
Yes, we've just closed a round of investment before I came here.
And they know that they're getting into a for-benefit organization, right?
In fact, that's why they invested in us.
Okay. Did they invest in it then as part of their corporate social responsibility or philanthropy or just...
No, Professor, I do want to make one remark because you brought this up. And because spending last 1 month in the Valley, something that we really picked up on, the minute you say that we're for benefit, I don't know why investors dismiss you.
Their eyes glaze over.
They dismiss you that, hey, maybe you don't make much of an economic sense, and maybe you should rather speak to philanthropy or grants. Professor, we make as much of a business case as much as we make an impact case, and because I refuse to take theoretically the assumption that if you're in the impact domain, you cannot be a profitable business. In fact, I'm sorry to say, but we're seriously a very profitable business to be in anyway.
Okay, so let me raise a scenario. Suppose Monsanto wants to buy you out.
You had to mention them, right?
Well, I mean, let's face it. Here is the ultimate for-profit, agricultural giant company.
Right.
Because really, in the for-profit sector, companies either go IPO, and in that case they become the public's company,
Right.
or they're bought by somebody. And the idea is that you go through the exit as a way of maximizing growth, right? You maximize the growth of what you're doing to the point of exit. I'm really interested in social entrepreneurship because sustainability is different from maximum growth.
Correct.
And our culture has really pulled us toward looking at maximum growth, especially here in the Valley.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in this kind of the idea of aiming at sustainability and profit making and maybe, giving out dividends to people who've invested in the company, but not necessarily achieving 10x, valuation or whatever on your stock. Do you think that it's possible to do both?
I know it's possible to do both because here's the thing, in our model, the more money the company makes, the more money the farmers make. It is hand in glove. Impact and which is economic impact for farmers and profit making for the company go hand in glove because the more R&D and fundamental research, the more IP we create and generate, the higher. Once we've not gone to operations, but once the day we start creating nanosheets from crops grown in the backyards of India, the farm. So who's to say the iPhone 7 or iPhone 8 battery cannot be components of the iPhone 7 and iPhone 8 batteries cannot be grown in Himachal Pradesh, in India. And that's the way that the farmers, it's a hand-in-glove process, not opposed to each other. It's if this happens, that will happen, and vice versa.
Yeah, okay.
May I react to this,
Sure,
Professor,
please,
as well?
Radhika.
Because I've been a mentor to Sanvar. I've seen how much he has inspired people in the Valley. And having looked at the whole for-benefit ecosystem, my belief is not only will Sanvar not sell to Monsanto, I'm speaking, that's just me, right? I'm not speaking on his behalf, but over time, people like him will bring a for-benefit way of thinking that will make Monsanto change. And that is my belief, and that is what inspires me. For example, Salesforce Foundation is set up as a for-benefit. I just learned that recently. Our own StartX, there is this movement happening on a large scale. StartX, the Stanford Student Accelerator. We were meeting with them and they realized they're a for-benefit. So it is mission-driven entrepreneurs can be very successful because passionate mission, people who are focused on mission actually may make more money. But one other thing I want to add is there's a whole ecosystem. There's still a room for nonprofits. We may not be able to solve infant mortality only with for-benefits. And there are for benefits that could be more profitable possibly than purely for benefits, pure for profits.
Yeah, okay.
However, there's a spectrum. And the key thing is having room for everyone to succeed. I do believe there are for benefits, but to the point you're raising, they will probably not make as much money as a for-profit in that industry. As long as there's an ecosystem that supports that, they understand that, the investors coming in understand that. Impact is another area to optimize for in addition to profit.
Okay, I think it's good to see that people have motives other than making money sometimes. This is actually refreshing. I saw a question way back in the back. Go ahead.
Yeah. What do you think IoT can bring to the agricultural world?
I
I ask this because I work in Colombia. I'm building my startup from Colombia with a Colombian co-founder. And we started with an IoT device to make plants talk to humans so that anyone could have a plant. Because we wanted to have more plants in the cities. But we realized that this is a gadget, a vitamin product, and there are more problems we can solve. So we're at the stage of pivoting towards helping the agriculture. And I'm really happy to hear your insights to see what IoT can bring to the agriculture.
I'm as for IoT as anyone can be. That's what I do. In fact, we're actively working. There's a reason I'm spending so much time here because it's exactly for things of this sort. Because we cannot wait to see how technology is being created here for, say, IoT was created maybe for a whole different reason altogether, but how we can pick that base technology and take in a whole new geography altogether and apply that it was not created for that intent maybe, but you can apply it in a new domain and can cause results that even the creators of the technology probably wouldn't have preempted or thought when they were creating, say, said technology. And we do that. Just as an example, we embed RFID tags. We've done small projects, and now we're trying to take it to large scale. We embed RFID tags into our shirts because every time someone buys our shirt abroad, I can't bring my customers from, say, Canada to the Himalayas to see the women making the clothes. But whenever they tap their phone on it, they can start a Skype call with our women there. And when you see a Canadian woman say thank you to our women back home, and thank you for you doing what you do because I appreciate and love your product, the women back home, they say to us one thing. They say that other than the economic benefit that is coming to us, and it's thank you for that anyway, but they say that finally we just see a sense of purpose in our lives because they see now finally why are they spending that time creating the product. And that couldn't have been possible if there was no IoT or integration. So I think IoT can start doing things that traditionally agriculture has not been able to, and we can even take it to the next step from now. I'm very excited for that, actually.
There was actually IoT to help in the soil, to help grow.
So there are various types of IoT, various kinds of systems that can be used. And I think the important thing is the application. Whether you call it IoT or you call it sensors or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's how you're using the technology, what kind of value you're getting from it. And I think all of us would agree that any kind of positive, new, innovative approach you can have to do a more efficient or more effective job with agriculture will definitely be a help. Go ahead.
I really appreciate your presentation. It was amazing. And could you please go back to the slide where you had this map of the industry, hemp industry over the world? I would be really interested to hear about your strategy of work with all those companies, because you told that it's in your plan. No, one of the previous slides. Yes. This one. So how you see your cooperation with these companies in these countries? What is your strategy and what is your tactics?
So that's what I said, that instead of reinventing the wheel, for example, a lot of funding and research and creation of technology has already gone in Colorado and Amsterdam, for instance, to take the cannabis plants and drive up the THC because that for their reasons. But the base technology is interesting. So now we're working with them. In fact, my co-founders are literally there right now to learn the same technology, but literally apply it the other way around, to now drive down the THC so that we grow more industrial plants rather than growing more recreational plants. So we love it. If they wouldn't have done it, we'd have to spend even more years in creating it from scratch. But fortunately, because cannabis has had innovations across the world in different ways, we're learning from each other as well and trying to apply that back home. So in fact, so far, about I'd say 90% of our research is replicating existing research in the rest of the world in India. And only about 10% is brand new research as of now. But we hope that as we sort of maybe build the Y Combinator of cannabis in India, we hope that we can spur more people back home.
And if I may just add to that, that is one of the things the Sustainable Development Goals platform can play. We've already recruited Sanvar to be our India, one of the first people in India for the platform. And philanthropy as well as UNDP can bring solutions like this, working with social entrepreneurs like Sanvar to places all over the world very effectively.
In fact, I'm going to be speaking to Professor Dasha later today to take help of the material science at Stanford. MIT as well we're speaking with, because why shouldn't we? We should get the world's best to help us and the farmers in a win-win scenario.
Countries
oh yes, yes.
Because actually their history of industrial usage of the hemp is several centuries, and they had a huge set of academic research in this area, and right now they again are going back to this industry because it's widely used in medical science. I'm saying not about recreational aspect, but about the let's say so more traditional medical usage.
Thank you for your comment. That's really very interesting, very good information. Dr. Khanna?
Very exuberant and passionate presentation. I'm glad that we are hearing something about an agro-based industry, which is the golden, sort of the elusive one. But let's go back to the fundamentals of your triple bottom line. Efficiency, equity, and environmental sustainability. The only way, if all three parts, how you divide up, how you prioritize, and those three, comes down to whether you call them value chains or you call them ecosystem. So to me, the question that arises is, how is technology and the associated organization, technology by itself never gives any benefit. That's also high tech. But the organization and innovation that you're talking about, how's that changing the lives or the income division? Even in Apple, the Chinese get only $4 out of the 400 or whatever. In this one, how is it that the poor woman farmer, she's getting a share, but what is that share, and is that share likely to change? Secondly, in your ecosystem, we all know that the division, the bargain between that, how it divides up, depends on the governance of the system. Mm-hmm. How is that changing? Because you may not have profitability, you may call it something else, but are the people at the bottom getting it? Thirdly, in terms of environmental sustainability, how is it that technology or the practices actually leading to a greater surplus? I'll give you 3 or 4 examples. Remember the euphoria over biofuels, not just general, but let's say jatropha, cellulosic ethanol. They were all seen as, I've seen similar presentations of that. Many years ago, when I was a graduate student, undergraduate at IIT, we went crazy about rice husks. Yeah. And startups were started, now talk about the early 70s at that time. But so my question is, how is it what you're doing changing the division of benefits across the various stakeholders?
Okay. I think the best way I can explain that is, one thing we learned in our process, that's something that we did consciously, was that when we had to make a decision of working with farmers on an economic, when you have to decide how will the reimbursement, how the money flow back in our system, as opposed to a fixed number, we kept it as a percentage-based model of our top line. So the more it's a fixed percentage of our top line. So it's between 20 to 25%. So out of every 100 rupees, it's by laws that they will get 25 of every 100 rupees. Now, here's the thing. Today, a kilo of hemp fiber, for example, we're taking and putting in a textile industry. So it's giving us, say, X. But we hope, and that's why the continual R&D. The continual R&D is to crank up the revenue of the same kilo. We hope that in the future, instead of giving to textile industry the 1 kilo, if we start giving it to, say, the nanotech industry, the same 1 kilo, it'll make it, say, 10x. So the farmer, it's a win-win scenario is how we plan, and we've seen the benefit already with the farmers.
Are you familiar with the Mondragon experiment in the Basque country, which is the, have you learned anything from their history? Will this actually benefit the farmer?
No, I'm sorry, I haven't.
So I wanted to add a comment on this one because some of the questions you raised are exactly, I didn't get into the anatomy of what is a for benefit, but it exactly allows bring these excellent questions, the governance, who gets the profits, and how does environment and social goals, how are they met? And the for benefit anatomy actually allows bringing that into the legal charter. And once it's there in the legal charter, an organization like founders, like passionate founders like Sanvar can make sure that tomorrow if there's someone else, that doesn't go away. It's actually in the legal charter. And that is something that a group of us are looking as a catalyst organization to bring around the world. And on the question on technology, with my utopian Silicon Valley tech person's Stanford Angels hat on, I'm already thinking all the way from, and knowing what Sanvar is doing, all the way from if women had more access to just the internet or even phones, they could have more information. Organizations here like the Loon Project at Google and internet.org, they can already take that to a whole different level, all the way to cutting edge of machine learning and AI and such. There's a project that Professor Chris Ree at Stanford's doing where you can look at big data and kind of extract patterns and trends around, so if you're looking within a domain, and just automatically extract information and put it in a database and effectively use it. One could look at what's happening with farmers with automated technology. So there is I'm a biased party, but I think there's a ton that can happen with heck, I'm so happy you're connecting with the professors here. Sanvar.
Actually, I have kind of a different follow-up question to this. Before interacting with Bohico, were most of these farming families working on a cash crop basis, or were they really doing sustenance farming?
Yeah.
And because I'm also a little concerned, will newfound wealth among the farmers lead to new problems?
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's the new area that we started working. It's so new, work in this domain, and not just for us, in other organizations across and working with anyone who's working in the economic empowerment model. We're trying to learn and speak to other organizations because this is literally what happened last week, and that's new to us. Yes, it is a problem because we've noticed and we've learned from this, because whenever farmers get additional income, we feel we're doing our part that's the job, to make them earn more money, and thus good job done. But that actually does lead to different problems.
Yeah.
You solve this one, but additional ones crop up. So that's where we're actively working to see how can you find a more cohesive solution in the end. We thought that
So it is interesting that this kind of thing is being seen in other parts of the world. The quinoa farmers in Peru and Bolivia are making a lot of money that they didn't used to make. And so this is now kind of coming to feedback in another way. Radhika, is this whole concept of the Sustainable Development Goals, is there a way to coordinate what we learn from these different kinds of experiments? Is that being built into the framework?
Absolutely. That's why even with the existing 4 pilot countries, there's a lot of focus on collaboration. And then taking these kind of learnings brings, so one of the way, the India pilot that we're thinking of, the first thing we'll do is bring all stakeholders together from within the country, from outside the country, social entrepreneurs, philanthropists, so that from day one we're thinking of learnings as well as how to measure them and how to take them to different parts of the world. That is the key part. To your question about the money one, there is, while it is challenging that as people get more money, it might get used in different ways. To me, seems even worse is the problem, the inequality, right? So
Right.
I would say it's almost about trading off.
Take your pick. Which problem would you rather have?
The reason I say this is there is a very interesting experiment, I forget either the IP or Innovation, the Poverty Action Labs did, on this question of if you give money, will the most marginalized know what to do with it? And they actually concluded something which surprised people, that actually they make very rational decisions, the poor. The thinking is don't, but they actually make fairly rational decisions. And so while it could be an issue, perhaps it may not be an issue as well.
Yeah. Philip?
Could you just go back to the slide with all the different countries on it one more time, please?
Okay. Oh. Do I
Find the slide and boot it up. There you go.
There it is.
Do I just?
So just a quick question. I see this slide and all I see, except for the United States, are competitors. So just simply put, what comparative advantage does India have in producing this good if so many competitors exist globally?
Cost. Fortunately, we can. I'm being honest. We can produce this cheaper and better. And okay, so not just cost, but cost is significant. The biggest advantage. I'll give you an example. These one linen shirt, one hemp linen shirt. The one I'm wearing right now, when we've boutiques in LA and other parts of the US, when they've ordered from us, we've been able to supply to them at significantly lower numbers than anyone else. Not because we're trying to beat other competitors on price. It's just our cost of manufacturing is cheaper for us.
Why?
Cost of operations in India are.
It's cheaper than China?
Oh no! So here, that's the thing. China, so far, that's good you brought that up. So far in the hemp industry globally, about 80%, 75 to 80% of global supply of hemp products across the board used to come from China and still continue to, till a few years ago where they started now redirecting China is the largest grower of hemp in the world, China and Canada. China, by choice, has decided now to start redirecting their supplies for domestic use, specifically for the PLA. In fact, China has a hemp military research center, which now, at a whole different level as an Indian, wants me to make hemp more available to Indian. Oh, that's. I don't want to go there. But,
Actually, I have to say we're just about out of time for the formal part. We've got some refreshments outside, and we hope that you'll stay around and meet with our speakers, talk with each other. Thank you for an inspiring session.
Thank you, Professor.